strong and get healthy. Stretch. Feel great about yourself and have some fun. It's time for you. Fitness is the key to your future. Don't get locked out. Take the challenge. Commit to be fit. I'm Susie Smith. Today's show is all about running. Whether you're an avid runner or if you're just beginning, or even if you're just thinking about starting, this show is for you. I have an expert here today with me who is a coach, and she's going to show us some demonstrations and also let us in on just some tips on how to get started with running and how to stay safe. So I'd like to introduce my guest, Lori Poe. Hi, Lori. Thanks for joining me today on the show.
Hi, thank you, Susie. It's a pleasure to be here. And just to tell you a little bit about myself, I am a registered dietitian. I'm the head track and cross country coach at Chartiers Valley High School. I've been there since 2000, and I ran track, cross country, played basketball in high school at Upper St. Clair, and then when I was in college, I went to the Ohio State University and I ran cross-country, indoor, and outdoor track there. So I have a lot of experience in doing track and cross-country, and my love for running brought me to continue doing coaching at the high school level. And when I was in college, I was involved in a program called Buckeye Athletes Against Drug and Alcohol Abuse, and we would go into schools and set up track programs. So that's how I started with coaching.
I told you I had an expert here today on running. I didn't realize you were also a dietitian.
Yes, I am. I'm a registered dietitian. I've been the president of the Pittsburgh Dietetics Association. I've been very involved in that and did some sports nutrition with Chartiers Valley High School when I first started.
Is that why you look so great after having 4 kids?
Jeez, thank you. Watch what I eat, yes.
Wow, that is fantastic. So you work with high school kids?
Yes, I work with high school kids mostly, but I oversee our middle school cross-country and track program as well. So mostly the high school kids, that's who I coach, and then give tips to the middle school coaches and help them out as far as developing the program at the middle school level too.
Well, that's really impressive, and I think it's such a good thing that you do because kids need to be focused, and sports are so important to teach real-life lessons, and that's what you're doing. And just from the short time I've spoken with you about how you approach the kids, I can see that you have a really good personality for that, and very kind. And so what are we going to talk about today? What if somebody's just getting started, or whether they've been running for a long time? Are there certain things that they should consider?
Well, first they should be in good physical shape. Make sure that you're approved by your doctor to be doing a strenuous activity. But anyone from little kids up to elderly can do running. It doesn't just have to be running. It could be walking and running. So for example, when I have a first-time cross-country runner, they might be doing a lot of walking and running, and that's okay when you start out. But the big thing I tell them is that you want to get your heart rate up. Mm-hmm. So if you're walking and you can carry on a full conversation with a person, you're not really walking hard enough. Right. So the idea is to get that heart rate up, walk to a degree where you're working hard and you can feel it, and then as you get stronger, then you add in running. So you might walk for a minute, run for a minute, walk for a minute, run for a minute, just, progress to where you're running more.
That's a great idea, is breaking it up, because like I was telling you earlier, if I break things into increments, into steps, it helps me so much more. Instead of thinking I'm going to run a marathon, you might want to think I'm going to try to run 1 mile, right, and then add it, maybe go to 2 miles.
Right. I also, with my kids that I coach, I do timed runs instead of miles, because I feel that, when I was in college, my coach did this, and it, instead of becoming like addicted to, I have to run 20 miles this week or 30 miles this week. If you go out and run for a time, on the days that you don't feel so great, you might not run as far, but you're still doing a good job. So when my runners first start, I'm like, okay, go out for a 20-minute run. And if I say 20 minutes as opposed to go out and running 3 or 4 miles, it doesn't seem as daunting. to them. So starting out with time helps them progress to the miles. So we start out with just running, it might be 10 or 15 minutes, and then the next day they take a day off. Then 10 or 15 minutes the next day, and then maybe the next day they do a cross-training day where there might be biking or they might be swimming, doing some other things to strengthen some other core muscles, lifting weights, getting into the pool and doing aqua jogging or treading water. So doing some different things so that they're developing not just, their legs in the cardiovascular.
I definitely agree with that. The cross-training helps so much. And some weightlifting, to keep your upper body strength too while you're running.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
We do light weights, lots of repetition, because it's more injury prevention. So a lot of times when I get the girls who are like freshmen and sophomores, they get really nervous, like they're going to get big muscles, and we're like, no, it's about maintaining, strong physical fitness, not making big muscles. So you're strengthening your muscles and the muscles around your muscles to help prevent injuries.
So I know you were mentioning earlier that hydration is so important.
Oh, definitely, especially in the hot weather in the summer. It's very important to make sure that you're properly hydrated. So the best way to tell that is the color of your urine. It should be a pale color and shouldn't have a strong odor. And so I tell my athletes, especially in high school, they don't have a lot of time to stop at the water fountain and drink. But every time you go to the water fountain, taking a gulp is like taking an ounce. So take 6 or 8 gulps of water every time. And when you're exercising, make sure that you're out. You have a water bottle. People tend to drink a little more if it's a little cooler, not like ice cold, but a little bit cooler, and have that, ideally every 15 to 20 minutes. But as a coach, I know that's not realistic because if you're out on a 6-mile run, you might have to plant water bottles places.
That's what I've done when I trained for the marathon. We had places where we put little snacks and water.
Yeah.
What about apparel, shoes, or what about like when you run and sometimes you get like a brush burn?
Yeah. Okay. Well, the most important equipment for a runner is shoes. And I can't stress that enough because I've had a lot of athletes who get injured because they have not great shoes. And the best thing that you can do is take your shoes and look at them. If you put them on a table and you look at them and they kind of go to one side or to the other side, that's telling you that you're either pronate in or out. So when you go to the shoe store, you want to look for a motion control shoe. Okay, if your shoes don't do that, then you're probably okay to get just any type of shoe that has good condition, like cushioning in it. So first thing I do a lot of times is say to the parents, that's money well spent because you don't want to have injuries with your athletes. And so getting a good pair of shoes. Often I take their shoes and I say, let's take them off. And if I can fold them in half, they're not good shoes because
no more support.
No support, right. So a lot of times we look at that, and then if they have like shin splints, which are pain in the front of your shins, then we look at what type of shoes they have. Maybe they've had them for 4 or 5 months, they've trained in them all summer, time to get new shoes because they're worn out. So shoes are real important. They'll prevent a lot of injuries, and they're expensive. You can look to spend well over $100 on a good pair of training shoes, but it's well worth it to not be injured.
Oh, and it's going to save your knees, and everything moves up from your foot, so you could have problems in your neck, by the time.
Just from poor shoes. I have a lot of kids. I mean, you don't expect kids to have back pain, and it's usually related to the shoes or poor running form.
Okay. Well, thank you for all that information. We're going to move on to some demonstrations.
Okay, great.
We have another guest here today who's going to be showing demonstrations. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself. Haley?
Hi, my name is Haley Poe, and I run cross country for South Fayette. I swim for South Fayette, and I do track and field for South Fayette. I also club swim for Pittsburgh Elite Aquatics, and I do compete in triathlons over the summer.
Thank you for telling us that. You sound like you are pretty busy. Yeah. Well, we're going to do some demonstrations of...
We're going to kind of go through what a normal workout would be for a track and cross-country athlete and talk a little bit about goals that you might set for your season. So Haley's goal right now, she's training for cross-country, high school cross-country this season. So she has workouts that she does throughout the summer to get her in shape for cross-country. And anyone who might be new to running should maybe pick a goal. If it's a charity 5K to do, then you have a way to look at, okay, my charity 5K is in October. You kind of back your training up and start a couple months out and work your way up to that event. So it's good to have some goals, and like with Haley, with the cross country, hers is over the summer, building from June to August, building up her mileage throughout the summer. So then she goes into cross country season with a good base, we say, where she'll be able to handle the training that comes up with high school cross country.
So when students take the summer off, should they keep training if they're going to be?
Absolutely.
So during the summer, they need to be on a program.
Yes, definitely. As a head track and cross country coach, and the cross country starts June, right after you get out of school. You gradually work into it, but if you're new to cross country and you're just starting in July or August, that's okay. The coaches usually individualize the training so kids don't get hurt. My funniest remembrances, I had a kid who said to me, first day of practice last year as we were stretching, I said, well, how was your training going over the summer? Because I hadn't seen him much during the summer. And he said, oh, good. I trained a lot last week. I was cramming. And I said, you can't cram for cross country. You have to be training all the time or you're going to get hurt. Mm-hmm. And so, that's what we want to avoid. Even if it's an adult training, you don't want to cram for a 5K. You don't want to think 1 or 2 weeks out, you're going to be able to train as much as you need to, because you'll end up getting injured or be, on the couch for the next week after because you're so sore.
That's always my fear, of people getting injured and not being able to do their sport.
Right. So you want to be, sensible about it. Train, listen to your body, take some days off if you need to, be properly hydrated, eat well, and take care of yourself, and the exercise should make you a healthier person.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, let's see what this all looks like, the different training and core work that you do to prepare for running.
I think film and television in general is a very discouraging industry. It takes a lot of years of pounding the pavement, calling people, finding your ends. You're gonna carry a lot of heavy cable, get dirty a lot, and find your way in. With the limited amount of resources out there and the limited amount of opportunities, there's a fantastic resource right here. And it's public access, it's free of charge. Anybody can come in and gain that experience. Dave absolutely loves to help people, never said no to us growing up. Anything we wanted to do, we were able to do here. The first year I was here, I would just sign on for different projects, like Stump the Students was a show that I worked on quite frequently. It was a game show. We would just come up with our own little ideas, mostly sketches, a lot of school projects, a lot of classes when we'd have to do a project on a story we read or something like that. I would always ask if we could do a video as our project instead, and we would typically do it through Dave. One of my favorite things we did was one of the simplest things we did. It was put together in an afternoon. It was something we wanted to do for fun. We were playing around learning Final Cut Pro, learning how to do linear editing, and we decided to do something in reverse. So we filmed me, actually, I think it was, running around the building out here, jumping off walls backwards, running around backwards, and played the whole thing in reverse. It was really simple. It was, corny. We just did it for fun, but for a couple weeks after that, people kept coming up to me at school like, well, how'd you do that? We were more exposed to our student body than we felt we were, not having an association with any extracurriculars of the school. It was fun to see how, even though we were doing it on our own, it was still making its reach to Bethel Park, and it was still something that we were getting feedback for, positive feedback from, and that was really nice. I would say that BPTV is one of the greatest creative resources this community has, and I would absolutely encourage anyone with any interest in production to come here and learn from Dave and take their ideas and turn them into something. If I hadn't been here at BPTV, I wouldn't have advanced at the rate I did in my industry. I wouldn't have had the passion for my industry nurtured the way it was here. I don't think that I would have pursued it because I don't think I would have had as clear a picture of what was available to me in this industry unless I had come here and gotten that first-hand experience prior to having to make the decisions that you have to make whenever you're graduating from high school. Opportunity really only comes to people who establish a lifestyle to seize it. And this is the kind of place where you can seize an opportunity and change what you want your future to be.
Lori, now there are different types of stretches that you have your students go through.
Yeah, definitely. Static stretching is probably what most people who have grown up with, but static stretching is just standing still or sitting still and stretching your muscles. And a lot of times you need to be warmed up very well before you do the static stretching. So most people are accustomed to doing the static stretching before they exercise, but actually you should do it at the end when you're very well warmed up.
Because your muscles are like not elastic yet, they're still kind of tight.
Yeah. So research has shown that dynamic stretching is what we should be doing to get our bodies warmed up. And so for running, there's specific dynamic stretches that you do that mimic running. So things like high knees, butt kicks, there's A skips and B skips. They're all things that help our athletes learn proper running form, but they're also great because they're warming up the muscles that they're going to use to run, as opposed to just sitting still and stretching your muscles. But as a coach, we do both, and we do some of the static stretches as partners at the end where we really stretch the muscles after they've been warmed up well.
So the dynamic stretching that people probably aren't as familiar with,
They probably see people doing it. So if you see runners that are really good at a race, they're probably doing it, and people are looking at them like, oh, should I be doing that? So it's a lot just learning it, and you can Google online dynamic stretching, and you'll come up with a lot of different things. And it's really about maintaining, learning how to have proper running form. So a lot of it is not heel striking. It's the ball of your foot and you're rolling up onto your toes. So learning how to do it, and it's not hard, but it mimics actual running, and so you're using the muscles that you do when you run.
And when you do dynamic stretching in the beginning, it's your warm-up.
Right.
So it takes your body from what I always like to think of as from a stationary or stationary position, and it kind of gets you ready for action. You know, so it's like the glue between the two where it moves you. Okay, well, let's see what this looks like. Okay, let's get started. What are we going to start with?
We're going to start with the typical static stretching. So stretches that you would do standing still or sitting on the ground, and they're going to stretch your muscles. Now, if you're typically used to doing that before you run, that's great. But as you get better and as your training progresses and you learn new things, you want to move more of the static stretches towards the end of your stretch, because when your body's really warmed up. So we'll start out with the static stretching. So Haley can demonstrate touching your toes. So you might not be as flexible as Haley, who can touch her toes, so maybe you can only go to like your knees. The whole idea is to do it slow, to feel the stretch, but not to pull anything.
And what are we stretching here? Hamstrings?
A little bit of the hamstrings, a little bit of your hips, all the way down to your legs. And when she's turning her feet in, she's modifying the standard touching your toes by turning it in. You're going to feel more stretch in your shins and the back of your legs. Now she's crossing her legs. So it's just different parts of the legs that you're going to feel different stretches in. So you would do each left and right. And you want to hold that for about 8 to 10 seconds. You really don't need to hold it super long, but you have to hold it enough to give the stretch. So we usually do like a slow count of 10 and then switch to the next one.
And since muscles use oxygen, she's continuing her breathing during the stretches?
Yep, definitely continue to breathe. And now she's doing the straddle stretch, where you're reaching each leg. So you're stretching the groin area, the hips, the legs. This will all help as far as warming up and cooling down when you're stretching. And then you can modify these by, if you're not as flexible or say don't have as great a balance, you could do all of these stretches sitting down. You can put your feet straight out in front of you. You can do the straddle stretch while you're sitting down. And so it depends on your ability as far as your balance and how flexible you are. So everything that you do, you can also do sitting down.
These are our static stretches.
Yeah, so they're staying in one position the whole time, counting it for, like I said, about a count of 10. And once you do that, then you move on to the next stretch. So when we do it in a group, we usually have our senior athletes sitting in the middle, leading the stretches. They're counting to 10, so everyone's kind of stretching together, and then they move on to a different one. So Haley did a lot of different ones during that all are stretching more the lower body. So when we do the dynamic stretching, we're also doing stuff to stretch the upper body.
Okay, so these are the stretches that most people are used to, even though they may not be as flexible as Haley is, but
Right.
these are what they're used to seeing.
This is what they're used to seeing. It's probably what they learned in gym class. If they were an athlete, a lot of times those are the things that have been taught. But with more research, we've been finding that the dynamic stretching is more beneficial.
Okay, let's move on to some dynamic stretching. Okay, so which dynamic stretch are we going to start with?
Well, we're going to start with real simple dynamic stretching that anybody can do. There's a whole bunch of dynamic stretches as you become a better runner and more familiar with it that you can do that take a little more practice. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to start out with high knees. And whenever you do a dynamic stretch, the most important thing is that you're not hitting your heel on the ground, because when you're running, you don't run with your heel. Okay, so it's the ball of your foot rolling up onto your toes. So we'll start with high knees, and Haley can demonstrate that. And you also want to, when you're doing dynamic stretch, maintain good running arms. So when you're doing it, your arms are involved. So when my new runners start out, they're not usually used to using their arms and thinking about all that. So we start out and might just be doing high knees, and then we add the arms. But good running arms are your hip pocket to your eye socket. So as soon as you see it, you bring it back down, up and down. But good running arms where you're not crossing it in front of your body too.
And you're not trying to go as fast as possible.
No, they're movement, but it's not meant to go through fast because you're warming up your muscles.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, let's see what this looks like.
All right, high knees.
High knees. Oh, I can see what you mean by her arms.
Yes, Haley has good arm movement, hip pocket, eye socket. They're not crossing in front of her, so that maintains good running form, and that's also good because you're training your body to have good running form.
Okay.
All right, the next one is butt kicks. So it's literally like you're kicking your butt. You're using different types of muscles, but you are almost kicking your butt, and you're still maintaining good running arms.
And I can actually see how that is warming up her hip flexors in the front.
Oh, definitely, yes. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay, the next one would be more of a bounding. We do high skips. So everybody at one point during your life learned how to skip. These are high skips where you're really bounding and getting used to the pounding of the running. You want to drive your arms up. You want to get up as high as you can. And, some kids are a little bit better at this and some adults are, but this is actually a very fun dynamic stretch because everybody at some point learned how to do the skipping, so it becomes a fun one to watch.
I still skip, and that's a really challenging thing to do. I can't believe how much energy you have to put into skipping.
Yeah, so skipping is great just to warm up running. So even if it isn't the high skips, but you're using the different muscles, and you then maintain good running form when you're doing it. That will also help warm you up. Okay, the next one, Haley, what else were we going to do? They're called Frankensteins, and she'll have to demonstrate, and you'll know why after you see her do it.
Oh, good warm-up.
So you're using a lot of the different leg muscles. You're also incorporating the arms, which a lot of the static stretches don't do. So that's why when you're doing dynamic, it's full body stretching.
And I can see she's warming up ankles. I can see lots of warm-up going on here, shoulders.
Yes, definitely. And this one, the straight arms, you're a little bit different as far as getting the upper body warmed up in just regular running form.
Because I guess you need to know that running is not just about your lower body.
Right.
Yeah, right. Total body.
Okay, the next one that she's going to do is toe walks. So this is a real easy one. This helps with your shins, helps with your calves, just walking on your toes.
That's a good exercise. That's warming up the calves and strengthening the ankles.
And it's real easy to do. And if you're not, real steady on your feet or balance is an issue, you could always do that walking with a hand on the wall. Mm-hmm. But you're still going to get up on your toes.
So anybody can really do these exercises, but they just have to modify, go slow, and just take one step at a time.
One step at a time, yeah. And they're all things that you've learned as maybe a younger child, and as you grow up, you forget to do those things, but they're great warm-up. Another one would be walking on your heels, so doing the reverse. heel walks. Instead of toe walks, you do the heel walks. And again, same type of thing, but you're doing reverse muscles and walking on your heels to warm up all the shin and the calf muscles. And if you have an issue with balance, you could always, again, use the wall and walk, have one hand on the wall as you walk alongside.
I like the fact that you can do this at any age. You can start at any point in your life and just modify.
Right, and if you're not going to be running all the time, even walking, these are great stretches to help, build different muscles and strengthen them to be a fast, if walking is how you're staying physically active, then this is great warm up for that also.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Well, I think we've seen quite a bit today on Commit to Be Fit. And I really want to thank you for coming on today.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, and Haley, come on over here. And I want to thank you for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You were great. And this is your mom, mom and daughter team. And this is fantastic. I really appreciate all the time and effort, that you took to come here and explain this to people, because we're all volunteers at BPTV, and we just try to spread the good word.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and running is an activity you can do for your whole life. I've been involved since I was little and continue to be involved in it. And as you grow up, you incorporate different aspects of it. Haley, being a triathlete, she does different aspects with the swimming and the running, and as you age, you figure out what works for you. Mm-hmm. And so it might be modifying it where you do more walking than running, but you figure out what works and what keeps you physically fit for a lifetime. So it's a great sport to be involved in, and it's really easy. You just need the shoes.
Yeah, you need good shoes. Yeah. And you also, before we go, you were mentioning that there are certain gadgets that some people might like.
Definitely. There's a lot of opportunity out there to use different type of gadgets, Fitbits, watches that tell you how far you run, watches that tell you what your heart rate is. All those things are great to incorporate if you like that type of technology to use it. But I would say the most common sense thing is to listen to your body. So even if you're using all those gadgets and you're feeling tired every morning when you wake up, you're probably overtraining. And you don't need a watch to tell you that, or you don't need a Fitbit to tell you that. So important to listen to your body. But all those gadgets provide you a different level of figuring out how to be physically fit.
But basically all you need is a pair of shoes and the will to run.
Right. Those gadgets are great to have as a supplement, but you don't necessarily need them to be an avid runner, a good runner, or just a person who runs on the weekends.
Well, thank you, Lori, and thank you, Haley.
Thank you very much. It was a
pleasure.
Thank
you. And I hope you come back. Okay. Well, that's it today for Commit to Be Fit. I want to thank you for watching, and I hope this inspired you to get moving. And you don't have to become a marathoner, but just get out there and use some of these stretches and enjoy the summer. And remember, take the challenge and commit to be fit.